And we're back in the car like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your hopefully happy hump day here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. So today marks, incredibly, unbelievably, the 32nd anniversary of Cliffhanger. Sylvester Stallone's return to big budget action movie making after his failed attempt, and Sly hasn't failed that much in his long and quite stupendously spectacular career. He's made a lot of bad movies, but to just say, well, where did he fail? He hasn't had too many things where you say, yeah, he really didn't do good, or this was bad. But Sylvester Stallone, for reasons unknown, well, I think it was because he was jealous of his then somewhat rival and now BFF, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he tried to remake himself into a comic actor. There are some people who are very funny, like Sylvester Stallone, but it doesn't translate the way that it should in movies. And despite the fact that Sly is, and everybody says this guy's a fucking riot, if you're around him, he's just funny as fuck. The timing just isn't, it's not there. So, to get into the mindset of the run-up to Cliffhangers, I remember this, the internet really wasn't much in evidence. I was still a year and a half away, or no, a little over a year away from New York University Film School. Stallone's career had dipped at a certain point in the late 80s, and that's why he attempted comedies. And the first one that he did in 91, called Oscar, I know a lot of people that really like that movie, that if you ask them, and not the testosterone type crowd, but if you ask your average Gen X movie fan who has, let's say, a wide range of films they enjoy, that if you say, well, what's your favorite Stallone film? They're not going to only name Rocky or Rambo movies. The movie he did with Vincent Spano and a very young Marissa Tomei, Oscar, where he plays a crime boss. It's like a crime comedy. I know a lot of people that love that movie, and they will defend it and say, no, he's really funny in that film, because he comes across as if he knows he's in a comedy, that he's playing a comedic, if it's possible for a crime boss to be he's an okay guy, like one of those. But then he disastrously starred in Stop or My Mom Will Shoot with fantastic Estelle Getty from Golden Girls. It was a terrible idea. And the story goes, and Sly and Arnold told the story together, I think they were on with Harvey Levin a couple of years ago, where Arnold had read the script and thought it was atrocious. But they still had a little bit of a rivalry going at that point. They were sort of friends, but nothing like, how they would become in later years. And Arnold's agent, I think, was the one who had the idea. He said, are you okay if I tell Stallone's guy that you really want to do this? And try to get him to do it. It's basically what ended up happening. Arnold was never going to do it, but Stallone's agent had the idea, we can jump on this before Arnold does. We have the right of first refusal. What do you think? And Stallone wasn't really sold on it, but hey, if Arnold wants to do it, look at Stallone would admit this, maybe wouldn't tell Arnold in person. Look at Arnold's track record. Look at how many great movies he had already been in. And this would have been the time when Terminator 2 was probably getting ready to come out. And that was, people were through the roof. The early buzz was, holy shit, this is better than the first one. This might be the best movie of Arnold's career up to this point. Most people would agree that was the case. So Stallone made two comedies. Oscar was a modest hit. Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. There is not going to be a rediscovery. It's actually the Citizen Kane of 90s comic cop movies where a tough police officer learns how to get along with his mom. No, this is it's just a terrible movie. And, you kind of almost fear for the career of everyone else involved. I don't know what, other than Estelle Getty and Stallone, the rest of the cast and crew got up to. In the immortal words of Jim Carrey, I hope you all found jobs, right? But you look at the fact that going into Cliffhanger, I considered that Sylvester Stallone already had been around forever. He must have been, how old was he? He was 46, 47 at the time, but it seemed as if he was already part of the long-term landscape. And you want to know where I'm going with this? Sylvester Stallone not only seemed older than he was, probably because I was still in my teens, but it felt as if he had been a part of Hollywood for 3 decades already, and that is not the case. He had barely been part of Hollywood for 2 decades. Now I want you to think about this very carefully, okay? Rocky was 17 years in the past, a little over 17 years, give or take, right? 1976, now we're in 93. Now you all know who Robert Pattinson is, right? Robert Pattinson, to me, he's still a young guy. He's a young guy, and he's on the rise. And where did we first see Robert Pattinson? Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. How old is that movie now? That movie is now 20 years old. It is further in the past from 2025 to Robert Pattinson's big break than Rocky was when Cliffhanger was preparing to come out. And the more I think of that, the worse I feel, because it makes me feel even older than I actually am. But them's the breaks. But some of the films Stallone made in the late 80s, you see what he was trying to do. He didn't want to just keep making action movies, because when he hit the scene with Rocky, with The Lords of Flatbush, one of Quentin Tarantino's favorite films, as he's, loves to talk about in Stallone's career, he wanted to do real acting. And I understand that's ridiculous to even say, but he knew where the money was. He'd made enough money, but there was a part of him that still wanted to stretch and create and in some way live up to the fact that they were calling him the new Brando after Rocky. And then he just made a lot of disposable action movies. And I'm not a fan of the Rambo series. You can literally take every Rambo movie. I'm coming to get you, Murdoch. None of them are any good. I'm sorry. They all suck. Every Rambo movie is 2 stars at best. I haven't seen one that I like. First Blood Part 2, it's not supposed to be funny. I'm howling watching that movie. First Blood, the first one is okay. I'll give it 2.5 out of 4. It's just not good. None of them are good. So he did Lock Up in '89, and it had the right idea. It was sort of the forerunner to Escape Plan with Arnold. It's a kind of a prison break movie. It didn't set fire to the box office. And Tango and Cash with his buddy, and I love him, Kurt Russell, I did just okay. That's a film that should have done better. But it's not really what you would call a good movie. Then he did Rocky V, and Rocky V is not good because Sly never figured out what to do with the character in that film. He started the first iteration. They actually shot 6 weeks with Rocky very seriously neurocompromised. And, I can't blame Sly. He shut down production and started over. He said, I just can't do it to this character, meaning he was speaking in a very heavy, where he was having difficulty speaking and slurring his words, and Sly he just couldn't continue with it. So they scrapped that and they went in a different direction, and Rocky V just not good. So he made a bunch of films. Over the Top was lousy, and as much as I just talked about it, I love Cobra, it's not good. It's not good. So he figured, let's try comedy, but it didn't work. So when he got the script for Cliffhanger, he's 45, 46, and he knows that this is not an award-winning script. But if done right, if he can get the right filmmaker, the right budget, and if we can get the right actors for the roles, this can be a really terrific summer blockbuster. And this is one of those times where his thought process was correct, where he wasn't filling his head with bullshit about, well, it'll work, Estelle Getty's funny, or Oscar's going to turn out to be the biggest sleeper hit of the year. He knew what Cliffhanger could be in the right hands. And he was a big fan. He liked Renny Harlin a lot. Renny Harlin had that incredible summer of 1990 where he directed Die Hard 2, enormous hit, dollar for dollar, I think. When I say dollar for dollar, I mean inflation adjusted. I think it's the second biggest hit in the franchise. Die Hard with a Vengeance, dollar for dollar, being the biggest hit in the franchise. I know that seems crazy, but it was. And Renny Harlin also had Adventures of Fort Fairlane with the Dice Man himself. I love the guy, Andrew Dice Clay. Oh! I'm not going to do any of his nursery rhymes, though, I great promise. But Adventures of Fort Fairlane, like the ultimate guilty pleasure movie, it's an absolute scream and very much a product of its time. But Stallone, he wrote a treatment, and he worked with this guy named Michael France, very talented screenwriter, and there were a number of different writers who turned in drafts for what became Cliffhanger. And if you watch the movie, if you could actually go on YouTube, the opening credits of Cliffhanger, the number of different writers who received credit, I think this holds the Guinness Book of World Records. I think there are 7 writers that got story credit. And one guy got credit for the premise. The premise. That gets you credit. That guy probably made a couple of $100,000. Nice work if you can swing it. I mean, I'd like to sign up for that. $200,000 for the premise to the story. Not even the story, the premise to the story. Amazing, but true. So, Stallone did some mountain climbing, but it was understood very early on in the process. And this is not really a mountain climbing film. And it's important to note. This is Die Hard on a mountain, but we'll get to that. When Sly got the project, there were a couple of different ways to do this film. They could have emphasized the climbing. They could have done a little bit of more of an Iger sanction kind of thing, where climbing itself is essential to the story. That, for example, in the Iger sanction, it's an international climbing expedition where Clint Eastwood's John Hemlock, great name, Jonathan Hemlock. It's actually a terrible name. This time when I say great, it's not a great name. He's trying to unmask an assassin while on an international climbing expedition. So there's a scenario where the movie Cliffhanger has a lot of actual climbing, real world, practical climbing of Stallone, where he would climb and then they would have stuntmen and doubles and all this sort of stuff, with the same basic story of what amounts to an airplane heist a la Bane, a lot of years later in Dark Knight Rises, that sort of thing. But Stallone didn't want to do that. He did not want to turn this into a more or less a remake of the Iger Sanction, which was a Clint Eastwood film that Stallone loved the movie. It's not one of Clint's best. It's the most difficult production that he was ever on. But that was a film that Clint did a lot of his own climbing, and I gotta be honest, I don't think that was particularly safe. He's up there 6,000 feet up, hanging from a suspended wire. We could have lost Clint Eastwood Jr. right there. I mean, one of his doubles got killed in a rock slide. Like, that was dangerous. Stallone was not interested in any of that. I give Clint credit. I'm sure he said, I'm not doing anything. Clint is fucking crazy to do what he did. Clint was crazy. And I don't think the studio would have been able to get insurance if they had told like the Lloyds of London, oh yeah, the biggest movie star in the world is going to be hanging off the Iger 6,000 feet in the air with just a suspension wire and nothing else. What do you think? I think that we're not going to work with you anymore is what I think. So Stallone, who is afraid of heights, I know he's a tough guy, macho guy, he's afraid of heights. That was one of the other reasons why he chose to make the movie this way, why they tailored the script in this fashion, not Clint Eastwood's Jonathan Hemlock climbing and this guy gets bumped off, and that guy gets bumped off, and this person falls to their death. He said, no. We're going to make this more of a self-contained story than it seems. So you have the Die Hard structure, as crazy as it is, because the idea, Die Hard on a, Die Hard in a, Die Hard with a, right? All of these movies which are Die Hard clones. Sudden Death with Van Damme, Die Hard in a sports arena. Air Force One with Harrison Ford, Die Hard on a 747. Passenger 57, Die Hard on a 747. Executive Decision with the aforementioned Kurt Russell, Die Hard on a 747. Right? It's just what it is. Toy Soldiers, Die Hard in a prep school. Cliffhanger, Die Hard in the Rockies. But the Die Hard angle in this film is that after the plane heist, the money goes missing. It's a little bit of a D.B. Cooper parachute out, and where's the money? So they're looking for the money, and there's a ticking clock of the fact that Stallone's former friend, Hal, played by the always fire, another cheat code actor in Michael Rooker, what a boss he is. They were friends, and an incredible opening sequence. This is top 10 greatest opening sequences of any film, period. It is up there in its own way, and I wouldn't say this about too many others. It is almost as good as the rave sequence with Wesley Snipes in Blade in 98. And when I tell you that's really saying something, because that may be the greatest action sequence in history right there. That is so badass. But you have Michael Rooker, more or less, a hostage of a genre actor I love, Rex Linn, who plays this kind of corrupt Secret Service agent. It's a similar kind of a character played by Xander Berkeley from Candyman, but in Air Force One is a sort of a turncoat Secret Service agent. So Rex Linn plays this Secret Service agent who's working with another cheat code, one of the greats, John Lithgow's Eric Quaylen. That's a great name, Eric Quaylen. And John Lithgow, he plays a movie like he's in a comedy. He's reading his lines like he's in a comedy. Normally that would throw what's ostensibly a serious action thriller where the stakes are sky high, no pun intended. That should throw the film out of whack. I don't know how it works, but Lithgow, his scenery chewing, this is Ricardo Montalban, this is William Shatner, this is James Woods level scenery chewing. Every line reading by Lithgow, he is just hamming it up. He has a moment, he's talking to the Rex Linn character who just doesn't even want to deal with him anymore. You want to kill me, don't you, Travers? Well, take a number and get in line. Just to hear John Lithgow say, take a number and get in line, worth the price of admission. So you have this die-hard setup. They're on a mountain. They're pretty high up in the Rockies. They're pretty high up. And Stallone's character gets beat to shit. He's freezing to death. First off, if this were real, he would have frozen to death in the first hour of the movie. There'd be no movie. So, but we go with it. Sly even said my t-shirt was freezing during takes. Yeah, no shit, bro. Of course it was. It's about 15 degrees up there. So Stallone's character gets beat up a lot in this movie. And I remember seeing it. I went with my dear old dad. We saw it across the street. We were in Woodbury at the time. What is now the Equinox Gym, which was the movie theater just known as the Syosset. And we saw it opening day. And there's a scene in the film where Stallone's character pretty much gets the shit kicked out of him by one of the bad guys. And at the beginning of the fight scene, a guy to my left goes, "Come on, Balboa!" The whole audience was cracking up because this guy shouted out, "Come on, Balboa!" And then as Sly is getting beat up by this guy, somebody goes, "This guy can't fight like Rocky." I mean, it was great. This doesn't seem like a sort of audience participation movie, but the Rocky references, come on, Rambo, really great stuff. Another thing, before I forget, so this movie is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. It's about 70%, maybe slightly below. It got pretty good reviews from critics, but also similar to Blade, which I love. It's not a lie if a critic, and I think Newsday gave it 3 stars, but they pointed out that this would have probably been Jack Matthews or John Anderson. Those were the 2 lead critics of the day, both really good film critics. They pointed out, whoever it was, the movie does not sustain the unbelievable tension and magnificent execution from the directorial, again, Renny Harlin, from the directorial perspective, the magnificent execution of the opening sequence. There's no way the film could, forget top it, it couldn't match it. So I'm going to have to explain what I mean. Now just picture yourself seeing this film on opening day, and let's say that you're lucky enough, as my dad and I were, we were in a theater. It wasn't quite stadium seating, but it was close, and there was a balcony. My dad and I actually sat in the balcony, and I wasn't thinking that it was going to be anything that great. You pay an extra buck in 1993. My dad, as he would say, I'll be a sport. Or as he would say, I'll be a sport. We'll pay an extra couple of dollars. We'll sit in the balcony. So the film opens. There's no terrorist situation or thief, situation like the typical Die Hard. The film simply opens in the Colorado Rockies, and the character Hal, played by Michael Rooker, is with his girlfriend. Her name is Sarah. They're up. They're not even really that high up, but they can't get down on their own because while he was climbing with his lady friend, he hurt his foot. I mean, shit happens. He probably could get down on his own, but he can't guide her down, was the point. I don't think this is spoken. This is what we get out of it. He is presented as a great climber. I don't think that he's supposed to necessarily be as good as Sylvester Stallone's Gabe Walker, but he's a capable climber. He knows what he's doing up there. But he should not have taken his girlfriend on this sort of climb. There are ways to sort of teach somebody or somebody learning the ropes, but what he does is just stupid. And I remember seeing the movie, my first thought was, well, this is not, why did he even do this in the first place? I don't even think she's at the novice level as far as being a climber. So Stallone's Gabe Walker, he's a part of the search and rescue team in the Rocky Mountains. It's the sort of a job that is real. It's a real job. And, you meet a couple of other characters who come across like real people, not like actors playing roles. And there is a certain sense of what Richard Donner would call verisimilitude. And ironically, Richard Donner worked with Stallone a couple of years later in Assassins. But there is a sense of verisimilitude. And I mentioned how Stallone was afraid of heights. He didn't really go very high in the air. There was a lot of CGI. And Renny Harlin and his team, and this was right at the same time frame of the original Jurassic Park, if you're thinking, well, what would the CGI look like? It's very subtle, and Harlin figured out how to seamlessly blend, computer work of the day with practical effects and actual stunt work of people on a mountain, not at ground level, let's put it that way. So this opening sequence has and a wonderful actress. She only appeared in 2 movies, named Michelle Joyner, and she is phenomenal in both of them. She plays the character of Sarah, the girlfriend of Hal's, the Michael Rooker, in this film, and then she plays a young mom who is stricken with the deadly Motaba virus in the movie Outbreak 2 years later. That was directed by Wolfgang Peterson, who did Air Force One, and he also did In the Line of Fire with Clint, same summer 93. So Stallone shows up, and his girlfriend, terrific actress, she had been on Northern Exposure, Janine Turner, didn't really have the movie career I thought that she was going to. But her and Stallone are boyfriend and girlfriend, so they're kind of monitoring this, and Stallone shows up on the scene to help bring Hal and Sarah to safety. He's doing his job, even though these are his friends. And you could tell that the girl is petrified. She is already scared to death. And it seems like the kind of situation where he talked her into it, probably because I think he just wanted to impress her and maybe they would have sex later. It's so crass, but that's how it comes across, no pun intended, but that's how it seems in the movie. He did it because he wanted to show off, and it just was not a good idea to begin with. So Stallone gets up there, and he has all of the accoutrements. He has all the wires and the cables and the hooks, everything. It's exactly what it's supposed to be. And he gets his friend, Hal, he gets his buddy to safety, and then he brings the line to Sarah. And, well, let's just slowly do this. So she has to kind of move as slowly as possible from one point to another point. And there is an issue with the equipment. It's not as safe. It's the sort of thing where maybe he should have checked his equipment before going out, but he didn't have time. The line, the wire, the cable is frayed. And Gabe Walker has a life and death moment where he decides to go for Sarah. Hal is screaming, "Don't go out there. You're both gonna die." Gabe, character of Gabe, makes the decision in the moment. No, he doesn't say it, but it's not gonna hold. Meaning, she's not gonna get anywhere near us. She is gonna fall to her death. I have to go out there and rescue her myself, or she's gonna die. And Michael Rooker as Hal screams, "Don't do it, don't do it." But he goes out there, and as it turned out, the movie is clever in the way that it plays both sides, because we get enough to know that was not going to hold. That cable was going, and if Sly had not, if Gabe Walker had not gone out there, she's going down. That's what the movie very clearly tells us. He goes out there, and without spoiling it, it doesn't go the way that we expect it to. And that's what spins the movie into the direction where we end up with Gabe Walker inadvertently getting involved in what appears to be a terrorist situation, but which is actually similar to Die Hard, a high-end case of stealing a ton of money. And, Stallone's character is just a guy. He's just a mountain guy. He's not a cop. He's not a government agent. He's not Robert Rath from Assassins 2 years later. He's a regular guy going up against highly trained mercenary types. It's a bit of a stretch to think that he does as well as he does in the world of the film. But as I say, he does have these moments where he just gets beat up, beat around. And the trailer, it's top 5 best trailers I've ever seen, the full theatrical trailer. I don't remember the music that it's scored to, but it's some kind of an operetta, which is gorgeous. And the images in the trailer, perfect. And it got people excited. It got the typical movie fan excited to see Stallone in this kind of movie again. But to be fair, he never had made this kind of movie. The Rambo films, those big action movies, Tango and Cash, if you want to throw that in there, Cobra, they were not large scale, large budget in the manner of Cliffhanger, not even close. But we knew going into 93, or people like me who read Entertainment Weekly and Premiere Magazine, that Stallone had 2 action movies. He had Cliffhanger and then Demolition Man in the last quarter of the year. Most people would say that Demolition Man, it actually was underrated. It's a really good movie. It's silly, but it makes a lot of points about pop culture and where society seemed to be headed. And they got a lot of stuff right, unfortunately. Got a lot of stuff right. But Cliffhanger was successful at the box office. The budget was around 70 million, give or take. I mean, who knows if these numbers are accurate. It was about 70 million. That was the projected budget marketing. It grossed 255 million worldwide, which, that's pretty good. It would be okay for now, but for 32 years ago, you start extrapolating inflation adjusted, it was a significant hit. But interestingly enough, and I always say this, when I come back to it, I can't help it. The film grossed 82 million in the United States, which means it made 173 million overseas. It basically doubled the tally overseas that it did in the United States. And why? I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to keep saying the same thing. In Europe, they line up around the block for Stallone. Robert Sklar, New York University film professor emeritus. That was his quote, and he was always right, because the numbers bear it out. A ton of Stallone films, The Specialist being another one, the year later, bombed in the United States, but cleaned up in Europe, because in Europe they line up around the block for Stallone. And he always only called him Stallone. He never called him Stallone. And everybody in the class, American film 1975 to 1990. We actually watched Rambo First Blood Part 2 in that class. Now, what a great class. Everybody in that class called him Stallone. He even corrected me once. I said, well, what do you think about Stallone? He goes, no. Stallone. In Europe, they line up around the block for Stallone. But Cliffhanger, a terrific action movie, incredible stunt work, marvelous blending of real-world practical effects, excellent stunt work, explosions, and CGI of the day. Cliffhanger released on this day, 1993, directed by Renny Harlin, screenplay by Michael France and Sylvester Stallone and like 5 other people, and co-starring Janine Turner, Michael Rooker, Michelle Joyner, John Lithgow, and Rex Linn as the turncoat Secret Service agent. This has been episode 524 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your hopefully happy, rainy hump day here with me in New York. And if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then, peace.